Welcome to my channel and to my review of the new Aeldari Codex, which is available for pre-order from today, and you can get it from Games Workshop from next week. As ever, thank you to Games Workshop for sending this through to me for free and to other content creators so we can get our paws on it and make some content for you guys. Right, the first thing I should mention is the Aeldari Codex contains all the rules for 3 factions essentially: Craftworld Eldar, Harlequins and Ynnari. It has more rules in it than any other 9th edition codex so far. If you already play any of those factions or combinations of those factions, you're going to love this book. It's got the most variability, the most options I've ever seen in a Warhammer 40k codex. There are so many different ways to play and customize your faction. But at the same time, I feel like some people who are new to the game or new to the faction might find this book somewhat intimidating. Where do you start when there are 43 pages of additional rules outside of the data sheets? And those 43 pages do not include the Crusade rules. I feel like this book hits the high watermark of codex design. It gives existing players the most depth and the highest number of options we've ever seen. And in that regard, it is probably the best codex we've ever seen. But at the same time, some new players or casual players who just want to pick up this book and play with their army might wonder what the hell is going on. So in this review, I'll try to break it down as simply as I can, because doing a full review of this book would take hours. Right, first up, as I said earlier, there are 3 factions in this book. There's the Craftworld Eldar, there's the Ynnari and the Harlequins. And each of these factions get something a bit like miracle dice that the Sisters of Battle get. For the Asiani, which is the Ynnari and the Craftworld Eldar, they get Strands of Fate. And for the Harlequins, they get the luck of the Laughing God. The way Strands of Fate work is you roll 6 dice, and you can keep up to 4 of them for Strike Force missions or 3 of them for incursion missions. It tells you how many of those dice rolls that you can retain depending on the mission size that you get. Farseers can allow you to re-roll one of those dice rolls, and there's other ways to manipulate them using stratagems and relics and things like that. But essentially, roll 6 dice, and if you're playing a 2,000 point game, you keep 4 of them. And depending on the dice result, depends on which ones you might want to keep. A dice roll of 1 allows you to manipulate the advance roll. A dice roll of 2 allows you to manipulate the charge roll. And then psychic test, hit roll, wound roll, saving throw. And by manipulate them, I mean count as an automatic 6. Before making any roll of any types of dice, you can count an automatic 6. You roll your Strands of Fate dice at the start of each battle round. So battle round 1, that's your turn, your opponent's turn. Then battle round 2, your turn, your opponent's turn. At the start of each battle round, you roll 6 dice. And at 2,000 points, you keep 4 of them. And those will count as automatic 6s, depending on which dice rolls that you retain. It's interesting that there's hit rolls, wound rolls, saving throws, for example, but there isn't an automatic 6 for a damage roll here in the Strands of Fate, and there isn't an automatic 6 either that you can, or you can't manipulate the 6 for a damage roll for the Harlequins equivalent as well. Basically, it's quite a simple mechanic and I quite like it. You get 4 6s a battle round every battle round, which you must put on a dice roll before you roll that dice roll, and you don't get to pick which 6 that is. It depends on the dice roll that you got. It depends on the random result that you got when you made your Strands of Fate roll. They give you an example here of someone rolling a 1, 2 2s, a 4 and 2 5s. Because he's playing Strike Force, you keep the 2 2s and the 2 5s, and the 2 2s that he rolled will allow him to get an automatic 6 on a charge roll twice because he's got 2 2s. And the 2 5s would be an automatic 6 for a wound roll twice per battle round. That's the Strands of Fate thing. Luck of the Laughing God is a similar thing that you can do for Harlequins, but it gives you a full reroll, basically a free CP reroll. So for Harlequins, if every unit from your army has the Harlequins keyword, Then at the start of each battle round, you gain a number of luck dice rerolls depending on the size of the battle you're playing. And a strike force is 3 dice. And you can use them to reroll a hit, a wound, a damage, a saving throw, or an advance roll made from your army. Any luck rerolls not used by the end of the battle are lost. So Harlequin players essentially get free CP rerolls that they don't have to spend CP on. In addition, you can make a Luck of the Laughing God roll to try to increase the number of luck rerolls gained. To do so, roll up to 6 d6s. If every result is unique, you gain a number of additional luck rerolls equal to the number of d6s rolled. So if you rolled all 6 of them and 2 of the dice are not unique, then you would gain 0 more rerolls. But obviously, if you only roll 1 dice out of the 6, if you gambled just once, that dice roll is always going to be a unique number because it's the only dice roll that you've rolled. So you get 3 at strike force, and if you only roll 1 dice, then essentially you're getting 4 a turn every turn. Well, 4 a battle round every battle round. So Craftworld Eldar and Ynnari's get an automatic 6, and they get 4 of them. But whether they put it on an advanced, charge, psychic, hit roll, wound roll, or saving throw depends on the dice roll result. And then Harlequins get 4. If they only gamble once, they'll get 4 rerolls per battle round that they can put on a hit, wound, damage, saving throw, or advance roll. But the Harlequins could gamble more to try and get 2 or 3 or 4 more. But they should be able to get a minimum of 4 a turn every turn. Harlequins still have their normal 4-up invulnerable save. They still can advance and charge and fall back and shoot and charge. Also, each time a melee attack is made against a Harlequin unit, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. So -1 to hit in close combat. This doesn't apply to their bikers or vehicles though, just their infantry. Right, that's the Harlequin's core abilities. They're lucky. They've got the Luck of the Laughing God, lots of CP rerolls, and they're as quick as they ever are, dancing around all over the place, falling back, shooting, advancing, charging, and -1 to hit in close combat, which I don't think they were before. As for the Asuryani, which are the Ynnari and the Craftworld Eldar, well, their battle focus rule has changed. Battle focus allows you to, with assault and pistol weapons, you can move and advance and fire guns, so long as they're pistol and assault weaponry, as though you remain stationary. Or what you can do is you can move, shoot, and then move again. So you could move with your heavy weaponry. You can move, shoot, and then move again. You can move a long way with heavy weaponry with battle focus, but it'll be -1 for shooting. Or if you have a pistol or assault weapon, you can move, shoot, move again. Everyone can move, shoot, and move again. And pistol and assault weapons can move and advance and then shoot. If you move, shoot, and move again, it says that you can't embark within a transport. And if you battle focus through an area of terrain, so if you're moving and then you're shooting and then you want to go back into the area terrain as part of your advance roll, you have to subtract 3 from the dice roll. So if you move, shoot, and then jump back into an area terrain piece and you've rolled a 1, 2, or 3, you're not moving anywhere because it's -3 to your advance roll if you do it that way. So battle focus has been tweaked a little bit, but it's still pretty much the same thing. It increases the maneuverability of Asuryani units, and as most of them move 7 or 8 anyway, Eldar are a very quick army. Right, that's the top level rules in this codex. There's a couple of other key changes as well, such as Phoenix Lords can only lose a maximum of 3 wounds each phase and can never be given relics or warlord traits. Solitaires can never be given relics or warlord traits. A couple of other little tweaks like that. But that's the top level if you're bringing Asuryani or Harlequins. And then we go down a level to the sub-factions, which is the Craftworlds or the Ynnari itself, or the Harlequins. A note on the Harlequins, they've got a rule called traveling players. So if you buy a Harlequins patrol, so you spend a couple of CP and you've got a Harlequins patrol, you can stick them in a Drukhari army or a Craftworld Eldar army and not lose any of your sub-faction abilities when you do so. Normally when you mix sub-factions up, you might lose battle focus ability, or you might lose a specific Craftworld ability, etc., etc. But Harlequins have got a key rule here called traveling players. Basically, you can slot them in any Dark Eldar army or any Azyani army and not lose the benefits that the Harlequins get for being part of a sub-faction, or not lose any benefits that the Dark Eldar or Eldar get for being in any part of a sub-faction. If you stick Harlequins in a Ynnari army, then they do lose their sub-faction abilities. So this traveling player's ability counts for Harlequin's patrols that are slotted in with Dark Eldar and Azyani. If you bring a Harlequin patrol with Ynnari, you will lose sub-faction abilities. But the way to bring Harlequins into Ynnari are Ynnari just count as Ynnari. Ynnari can have Harlequins in as part of their detachment, and they can have a number of Drukhari units in there as well. They can't include Phoenix Lords or the Avatar of Cain or Solitaire models, but they can include Cabal and Witch Cult from the Drukhari book, and you can bring in Incubi and Scourges, but for every Incubi unit that you stick into a Ynnari army, it's plus 4 points a model. For every Scourge unit you stick into a Ynnari army, it's 2 points a model. The page on how to build a Ynnari faction is actually 4 pages long, and there's 2 diagrams in it because it's a little bit, it's not that complex. It says you can bring these things, you can't bring these things. And then you slot them in, and then they're Ynnari, and they've got a couple of diagrams in it to make it as obvious as they can. And if you mash all your Harlequins and Azyani and Drukhari together, or combinations thereof, into an Ynnari faction, into Ynnari detachment, then you lose all those sub-faction abilities that you have, and instead you gain strength from death, which is at the start of the fight phase. If you're in an engagement range, you fight first. So Ynnari, be it Incubi, Scourges, whoever they are in a Ynnari sub-faction, fight first. And each time an attack is made by a model with this attribute, if that model's unit is below its starting strength, add 1 to that attack's hit roll. Which means that Incubi, Scourges, Harlequins, Wraithblades, Aspect Warriors, Guardians, any of these units included in a Ynnari detachment basically hit on 2s. If they lose a model, Ynnari are going to be hitting on 2s and fighting first. So Ynnari are the quintessential Space Elf chocolate box. You can drop in units from all over the place, which seems complex at first, but it really isn't. It's spelled out quite clearly. You can drop in units from all over the place. You lose all the benefits of those sub-factions, but you're fighting first, and you can add 1 to the hit roll if they get wounded. So it's good. It's cleaner. I like it. There's associated warlord traits, relics, and stratagems that go with being Ynnari, but if we go into every single one of these, we'll be here for a very long time. For example, the stratagems page, when we get to it, there's 6 pages of stratagems in this book. Okay, so Harlequins you can slot into any Azyani or Drukhari unit as a patrol detachment without affecting those sub-faction abilities. Ynnari, you just stick Harlequins in normally as part of that detachment, along with certain Drukhari units if you want to, and they change. They all get that fight first, plus 1 to hit if they're wounded sort of thing. So that's how that works. Then you've got the Craftworlds. So we talked about the top level things, the miracle dice type stuff, the luck stuff, and then you've got the Craftworlds. These are the sub-factions. And there is Ulthwé and Elatok and Beltan and Samhan and Iandan and all that sort of stuff. As I said, you can keep a Harlequin patrol and not lose any of their sub-faction abilities. For example, the Samhan, the Wind Riders, they can re-roll charges, and they are eligible to declare a charge in the turn in which they fell back. Samhan are known for all their bikes and their fast mobile warfare, and as well as re-roll charges and declare a charge in which they fell back, Well, there's also a warlord and a relic and a stratagem per craft world. So the Samhan stratagem costs 1 CP. It's called Warriors of the Raging Winds, and they can charge even after they advanced. So Shining Spears, for example, move 16, but when they advance, it's a flat 6 on top of it because they're on bikes. So you've got Shining Spears moving 22 inches in a Samhan detachment, and if you drop 1 CP on them, they can charge after they advanced. That's a 22-inch movement range with a charge at the end of it. And Shining Spears hit at strength 6 minus 4, 2 damage on the charge. Strength 6 minus 2, 2 damage with 3 attacks. So they're quite tasty. At 35 points a model, they're pretty pricey though, but they have got aerobatic grace, and each time a ranged attack is made against this unit, subtract 1 to hit. So they're always minus 1 to hit when you shoot them. Another Craftworld Iandan. That's the one with all the Wraith constructs. Iandan is a shadow of its former self, having been cracked open. Big yellow Wraithbone constructs with their blue heads. They add 1 to combat attrition tests whenever they have to take combat attrition, but that's not the main thing. Each time an attack is allocated to a model with this attribute, if that attack is an armor penetration characteristic of -1 or -2, worsen the armor penetration of that attack by 1. So AP -1 against Iandan becomes AP dash, AP -2 against Iandan becomes AP -1, which is pretty nice on an army which is going to be full of Wraith constructs, because Wraith Lords and Wraith Blades and Wraith Knights, all your Wraith constructs now have -1 to wound. They've all got that -1 damage, sorry. They've all got that Dreadnought ability. You know when you hit Dreadnoughts and you do 4 damage to it, and that Dreadnought goes, nah, I'm a Dreadnought, that's only 3 damage to me, or the Death Guard ability, disgustingly resilient. Well, all Wraith Guard, Wraith Lord, Wraith Knight constructs have that now. Wraithbone form. Each time an attack is allocated to a model in this unit, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack to a minimum of 1. So Wraith Guard, Wraith Lords, Wraithbone form constructs are going to be prevalent in an Iandan Craftworld list. And you're going to have that on top of reducing the AP by 1 of AP -1 and AP -2 guns. Basically, Wraith constructs got tougher, which is nice. How tougher? Well, the Wraith Knight, the big giant Wraith Knight, has got a flat 5-up invulnerable save now, which you don't need to pay for. 22 wounds with a 5-up invulnerable save. But if it's got a scatter shield, it has a 4-up invulnerable save. So the bearer has a flat 4-up invulnerable save all the time on a Wraith Knight. So it's going to be shrugging half of the damage that's getting shot at it, or half of the damage in close combat. It has Wraithbone form, so each time an attack is allocated to it, you subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack to a minimum of 1. And if you're Iandan, you're reducing AP -1 to AP -0 or AP -2 to AP -1. Wraith Knight's got chunky, people. Give it 2 star cannons and let it rampage up the battlefield with its big sword, the Ghost Glaive, and its big scatter field, and have fun. A Wraith Knight with 2 star cannons on it will set you back 430 points. And 430 points for a flat 4-up invulnerable save, reducing damage coming in. I mean, that's quite nasty. Star cannons are heavy 2, strength 7, -3, 2 damage now. So that's 4 shots coming out at strength 7, -3, 2 damage. And then, of course, it's got its massive Sword of Doom, which is a flat 6 damage if you do the normal attacks. It's always got 5 attacks, no matter how degraded it is. So strength 14, -4, 6 damage. Or you can do 3 attacks for every attack using its sweep profile. So it's either got 15 attacks, sweeping away at -3, 2 damage. Strength 8, -3, 2 damage at 15 attacks. I mean, that's killing entire squads. Or the overhand swing, 5 attacks, which is strength 14, -4, 6 damage for 430 points. And it's Titanic, so it can fall back, shoot, and charge. Yeah, Wraith Knight's definitely got a lot more resilient. Of course, you don't need Wraith constructs with an Iandan army. You can bring Aspect Warriors or Guardians or vehicles. Talking about vehicles, The Night Spinner has become the most deadly indirect fire gun platform in the entire game. It's 150 points with the crystal targeting matrix on it, and you're going to stick the crystal targeting matrix on it because each time this model makes a ranged attack, you can ignore any and or hit roll modifiers to the attack. And so a Night Spinner for 150 points, and you can keep it at the back, out of line of sight, because it can fire indirectly, and it's always going to be hitting on 3s, 4s, or 5s, depending on how degraded it is. Has got 2d6 shots at strength 7, -2, 2 damage. 150 points. 3 of these things, 450 points, less than 500 points for 3 of these things, firing, and each of them firing 2d6 shots at 48-inch range. At strength 7, -2, 2 damage, blast. I know it's anti-infantry, anti-elite at strength 7, -2, 2 damage, but that's also anti-light vehicles, and if you put them on heavy vehicles, all 3 of them will be able to kill. Yeah, the Night Spinner's a pretty nasty beast. The fire prism's still incredibly nasty. There's still a stratagem which allows you to fire additional shots for linked fire. That's when you've got a couple of fire prisms and you just select one fire prism. That fire prism does all the shots and the other 2 don't fire, or the other 1 doesn't fire. It costs you 2 CP now. But fire prisms, if you spend the 2 CP on that linked fire stratagem, invulnerable saves cannot be made against any attacks made by that model with that weapon. And that weapon is a heavy 2, strength 14, -5, 3d3 damage. If you're linking fire with one other fire prism, that'll be 4 shots at strength 14, -5, 3d3. If you're linking fire with 2 other fire prisms, then that's going to be 6 shots at strength 14, -5, 3d3 damage, ignoring invulnerable saves. Remember, you've still got Guide, Doom, and what's the other one? Guide, Doom, and Fortune are in here, but they basically haven't changed. Guide, Doom, and Fortune is still 18-inch range and still does what it does, but if you roll 10 or more, you can chuck out Guide, Doom, and Fortune to 24 inches. So it's got an 18-inch range, but if you roll high, that range goes out even further. Right, back to craft worlds. There's 6 core craft worlds, 6 different ways of playing your Aeldari, and they all come with a warlock trait, a relic, and a stratagem. And then there are far-flung craft worlds, and far-flung craft worlds are basically, you can pick one of the other craft worlds like Ianda and Samhain and things like that. It's like successor chapter tactics. You can pick one of them and use one of them but paint them in a different color, or you can pick 2 of the other far-flung craft world abilities. It essentially works exactly the same as Space Marine successor chapter tactics. You've got the 6 core ones, or you can say they're like one of them and paint them differently, or you can pick 2 from the chocolate box of far-flung craft worlds. So that's how you affect your things at a upper level. That's how Harlequins work and Ynnari work and Asuryani work with their miracle dice type thing, with their luck dice. Then below that, you've got the sub-faction abilities for Ynnari, which we said a fight first and have +1 to hit if they're injured. And then the sub-faction abilities for the craft worlds, of which I gave a couple of different examples. And then there's sub-faction abilities for the Harlequins as well, and they're called the Sedaths. And each Sedath, there's Light, Dark, and Twilight. And these are sub-faction abilities for your Harlequins. You either pick the pathway of the Light, and then there's a Warlord trait, Relic, and Stratagem for your Harlequins, or the pathway of the Dark, there's a Warlock, Relic, or the pathway of the Twilight for your Harlequins. And then there are sub-faction abilities as well. So for example, the pathway of the Light, each time an attack is made against this unit, if the attacking model is more than 12 inches away, so if you're shooting at Harlequins more than 12 inches away, they get transhuman. Remember, they're also -1 to hit in close combat for their infantry, so transhuman Harlequins at more than 12 inches away is a big buff for Harlequins, particularly as they fall apart like a stiff breeze. So pathway of the Light is supposed to make them more resilient, and the Dark and the Twilight Sedaths are supposed to make them a bit more choppy. If you pick the Twilight Sedath, basically, each time they fight, charged, heroic intervention, they get +1 attack, and Harlequins have a crazy number of attacks. Anyway, so there's sub-faction ways of changing what your Harlequins do and your Craftworld does and the Ynnari do. There's 6 pages of relics. To be fair, 2 of the pages are just Harlequin relics. There's 2 whole pages of Harlequins and 4 whole pages of Asiani, like move, shoot, move, and all the classic ones that you would expect. There's your ability to the Phoenix Reborn is quite nice. If you bring along a Phoenix Lord and he dies, then you can spend a CP, and on a 4-up you can set them back up again. The Avatar Resurgence quite nice. The Avatar 2 CPs, if the Avatar dies before he gets a chance to fight, then you pay 2 CP and he fights anyway. The Avatar of Cain, of course, is the new hotness for the Aeldari. The Avatar of Cain, toughness 8 with a 2-up save and a 4-up invulnerable save. Pretty brutal. Toughness 8, 2-up, 4-up invuln. And each time an attack is allocated to this model, half the damage characteristics of that attack rounding up. Molten Form. It's called Molten Form. It's like the Dreadnought ability, -1 damage, but on crack, you half all damage to the Avatar rounding up. So we're going to see a few Avatars riding around all over the place, particularly at toughness 8 now, and halving all damage. He moves 10 as well. He moves quite a long way. So yeah, many stratagems. Then we go down an even lower level. You've got the top level, as I said, you've got the top level, what the factions do. Then below that, you've got Craftworlds, Ynnari, Harlequins. Then below that, you've got Exarch powers. And there is a Crimson Hunter, Dire Avenger, Warp Spider, Shining Spear, Howling Banshees, Striking Scorpions, Dark Reapers, Fire Dragons, or Sweeping Hawks. Basically, all the Aspect Warriors now have Exarch powers as well, and these are upgrades. So for your Aspect Warriors or your Crimson Hunter, you can just use the datasheet. That's in the book. Boom, fine, datasheet done. If you want to put an Exarch in each squad, you have to pay for it. And there are 3 upgrades per Exarch, per whatever it is, per Dark Reaper, so for example, Fire Dragons have a 20 point, 25 point, and 15 point upgrade, depending on which Exarch you pick. Howling Banshees have a 20 point, 10 point, and 15 point upgrade, depending on which upgrade you pick. If you choose to put a Exarch in a squad, then that Exarch gains a wound, and it either gains a ballistic skill or an attack. The shooty ones all gain a wound and a ballistic skill. The choppy ones in close combat all gain a wound and an attack. So you get that no matter what, as long as you stick an Exarch in there. So that's an extra wound, an extra shot, or an extra attack. An extra ballistic skill or an extra attack. And you get the upgrade that you've paid for. So essentially the way of thinking about it is it's a way of paying for an upgrade per unit. Well, this could lead to a big pile of mess. It could lead to you running around with 3 units on the table, and that one's got this ability, and that one's got this ability, and that one's got this other ability. It could lead to something like that and be a bit messy for you and a bit messy for your opponent, and you're going to need a clipboard or a spreadsheet explaining everything to you. But it might not end up too messy. What you might want to do, for example, is bring a couple of units of Howling Banshees and pay for the upgrades, an Exarch in that unit and an Exarch in that unit, and they both have the same. And the same for the Fire Dragons. I'll pay for a couple of... So I'll give you an example. Let's say you brought along a couple of units of Howling Banshees. You could pay 20 points for those units to have Graceful Avoidance. While this unit contains a Howling Banshee Exarch, models in this unit have a 4-up invulnerable save. Nice, simple, done. For 20 points, you can basically give Howling Banshees 4-up invulnerable saves. For 15 points, you can give the Howling Banshee Exarch piercing strikes. So then the Exarch will be running around with 5 attacks, and if it's got an Executioner, that would be 5 attacks at strength 5 minus 3, 3 damage. That's not bad. That's strength 5 minus 3, 3 damage. It's basically like a not so strong Thunderhammer flying around all over the place, and it's only 15 points to upgrade your Exarch that way. Right, each of the Exarchs can be upgraded with an Exarch power, as there's 9 different types of Exarchs and 3 types of power each. That's 27 different things to talk about, so we'll just leave it at that. You can upgrade all your Sergeant equivalents to have extra powers, And if you're bringing Harlequins, you can give pivotal roles to Harlequins as well. You can give pivotal roles to Troop Masters, Death Jesters, Solitaires, and Shadow Seers. It's the same thing. Troop Masters, it costs 20 points, 25 points, or 20 points for the 3 different upgrades. Solitaires, 20 points, 15 points, 20 points for the 3 different upgrades. For example, the 20-point upgrade, one of the 20-point upgrades for the Solitaires is Thirsting Darkness. Each time this model advances, don't make an advance roll. Instead, until the end of the phase, they just add 6. Bear in mind that Solitaires have got lots and lots of attacks, and they move 8 anyway, and they can they can charge after advancing. Suddenly you've got a Solitaire that can move around 14 inches all over the place, always moving around 14 inches and charging after that 14-inch move. And that will cost you 20 points to upgrade it that way. So what we have here is lots of ways to upgrade certain units in your army at the unit level. Then you can upgrade things at the craft world or the sub-faction level as well. If you're a narrative player, then there's ways to change the feel of your army from the very bottom to the very top, so it perform exactly as your narrative wants it to. And if you're a competitive player, there's ways to min-max in here so your army performs exactly the way you want it to. There are 5 pages of relics. As I mentioned, 6 pages of stratagems. There are warlord traits for the Asuryani and the Ynnari, and there's warlord traits for the Harlequins. There are 5 different psychic powers in here. There's the Phantasmancy discipline for Harlequins, Runes of Battle, Runes of Fate, and Runes of Fortune for Asuryani. Well, not Asuryani, for Craftworld Eldar. I think that's Asuryani anyway. And then the Revenant discipline for the Ynnari, the Gaze of Yniad, and all of those ones for the Ynnari disciplines. There's so much in here, it's hard to review and hard to keep track of. It's hard to review because as soon as I go down into one layer and say, well, let's talk about this, then it takes me all the way down a rabbit hole explaining how things work and how they interact. And then I'm leaving so much other stuff out. So that's why this is a bit of a broad brush of a review. As for units and data sheets that jump out to me, well, I've mentioned a couple of them already. I like the Wave Serpent as well. Wave Serpents have Transhuman now. That's what the Serpent Shield does. So a 5-up invulnerable save, Transhuman Transport. It moves 16 and basically it's not going away anytime soon. You can fire the Serpent Shield, but it's not on the data sheet. Now it's a stratagem and you have to pay for it. You've got Corsairs in here. Corsairs Void Reavers are troops and Corsairs Void Scarred are elites. Now the Corsair data sheets both have the Asuryani and Drukhari keywords, so you can include them in Eldar and Dark Eldar lists, but you can't include them in Ynnari lists. Also, they don't have the Craftworld keyword, so if you do include them in a Craftworld list, then you'll lose the benefits that you get from having all the models as part of the same Craftworld, so it's a bit weird. The Corsair Void Guards can take a Psyker as the Sergeant equivalent, well, a Way Seeker I think it's called. They can stick a Way Seeker in every single one of their squads for those extra smites or for those extra Guide, Fortune, Doom spells. Corsairs have an ability which is 6s to hit, auto wound, but I'm not sure we're going to see many of them in the Eldari list for now because they're going to die like Eldari and you're going to want to bring stuff that has the Craftworld keyword to benefit from the Craftworld sub-faction traits. The Shroud Runners, those are the new Eldari bikes, the Rangers on bikes. Well, they can get light cover as though they were infantry, and when they're receiving the benefits of cover, they get an additional add 1. So put the bikes in cover and they'll have a 2-up save. For 35 points on shooty fast units that you're going to want to leave in cover, they've got a Ranger long rifle and a scatter laser. They're not great. As for the Ynnari, well, the Visarch, each time an attack is made with this weapon on a rune roll of 4+, invulnerable saves can't be made. So we've got 5 attacks at strength 5, -4/2 damage. Some of those will be ignoring invuns. The Yin Khan piercing strikes blow ignores invulnerable saves as well, or he can do a sweeping thing. So he's got 6 or 12 attacks, but the 6 attacks ignores invulnerable. So, and remember the Ynnari are gonna be fighting first. Essentially what this book is Tricksy Eldar doing what Trixie Eldar do, which is moving very quickly and kicking out a lot of punch. They're adaptable and can be upgraded in many different ways, and when you fight against them, you might be looking across the table at two exactly the same units, but those two units might function completely differently from each other. One might have better saving profile, and the other one might have lots of different attacks. Honestly, it was pretty easy to see when I read the Tau, for example, how the book functioned, how the book felt, and that the Tau Codex is, to my mind, Codex Battlesuit. And then when I look into the Aeldari Codex, it's so layered, it's difficult to see exactly how they might function on the tabletop because of all the options that are available to Aeldari players. But one thing I do know is that a certain percentage, maybe only a small percentage, but a certain percentage of new players or casual players are going to struggle with this book a little bit. It's not going to be helpful in getting new players into the game, and I think we want as many new players into the game as we can. As for the match play chapter approved secondaries in here, there's a good one for Harlequins and a good one for Craftworld Eldar, which will allow them to rack up some secondary points quite quickly. Shadow Operations scout the enemy for Asiani units, that's Craftworld and Ynnari, basically performing actions outside of your deployment zone. Anyone can do it, and it's 4 if you do it in your enemy's deployment zone, or 2 if you do it outside of your deployment zone. And then No Mercy, No Respite, a deadly performance for Harlequins, which is, there's 4 different things that you need to get. So kill something, get in the enemy deployment zone, etc., etc. But so long as you achieve a couple of them, you'll get 3 victory points if 2 or more of the following conditions apply. And if you bring a fast mobile Harlequin army that's determined to get out of your deployment zone and into your enemy's deployment zone, and let's face it, that's where Harlequin should be, you should be racking up at least 12 points for a deadly performance for the Harlequins. So there's 2 good secondaries there in this chonky book for the Aeldari. The chonkiest book we've seen since Codex Space Marines, and the most rules that we've seen in a 9th edition Codex ever. So the Aeldari are back with a bang. Whether they'll be any good or not is anyone's guess. I'm sure some competitive players will get their paws into this very soon and figure out some really filthy lists, because the ways of manipulating this codex is unfathomable to my tiny mind. But it seems to be the best 9th edition codex because of that variability, and it seems to be the worst 9th edition codex to my mind because of that variability. I'm so divided. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. Consider subscribing to deploymentzone.tv. Happy wargaming.